Greetings and welcome to Phantom's Edge. This will be Chapter 13 of this reading. After a few more hard whips, each followed by a painfully loud yelp from a dog within her quarters, Captain Brunhilde walked out holding a 3-foot-long leash. She pulled it to bring along Kaio by his collar, with the Kanai's hands still bound behind him. He also had his ankles shackled, only able to take small strides with his feet, and the tip of his tail tied with a heavy ball that forced it to hang down. There was even a red rubbery ball placed inside his mouth that strapped around his head, and a muzzle tightened over his snout, keeping him from speaking by any means. The black cat pulled her slave along her right side, giving a blissful smile, then tied the Kanai down to the port side of her ship. Before leaving to attend to other business, the felina took out her chain stick and struck Kaio in the back of his left calf, forcing the man to fall over onto his left side. He lay there not in pain, but humiliation, unable to do anything other than bend his ears and whine as he faced the railing of the ship. Brunhilde walked down into the servant quarters and motioned for Thomas. She kicked the boy out of his bed as he slept, then went to grab him by his right arm as she pulled him up and out of the area. She got him above deck and was getting ready to take the Rodenia to her quarters, but the boy noticed Kaio and jerked himself away from the felina. "Captain!" Thomas called out as he rushed over to the Kanai. The boy knelt down and slid a bit, where he rolled Kaio to have the man look up as he said, "Captain, are you alright? What happened?" With a strike to the boy's left ear by a chain stick, Brunhilde got the Rodenia's and the Kanai's attention. Both looked up at her in anger as the felina asked, "How dare you address this mud as your captain, Mouse?" "He's more of a captain than you could ever hope to be in 100 different lifetimes, feline. So stay away from him." Brunhilde grabbed the boy with her left hand and raised him to be eye level with her, while also having their faces only an inch away. She held him there for a second, breathing heavily from her anger, then calmed as she smiled and said, "I like your spunk, kid." "I'm no kid." Thomas raised his left foot and used it to push himself away from the captain, kicking her in the stomach before he stood in defense of Kaio. The felina stepped back slightly in pain, then glared at the Rodenia for a moment before smiling. She tried to step forwards to do something, but stopped as she heard Kaio viciously growl. Brunhilde glanced over at the Kanai on the floor, then looked back at the boy as she said, "Silence, mongrel." The dual-edged demon knew the black cat, just as much as he knew Jacqueline, and he didn't want Thomas to see the felina's true self. Brunhilde liked to be in control of all her men, regardless if she'd end up getting one so mad that they'd try to kill her, but she also liked to be controlled. Any who stood against her authority caught her attention in a way most would not expect. Excited. However, like Kaio, those who are in power for too long end up being stripped of that and brought to understand how meager they are in comparison to the black cat's own might. Brunhilde took this time to force Kaio back to her quarters, only having brought him out to of course humiliate the man amongst the crew members. She untied the Kanai from the rail, yet kept him to the leash, while she said, "Follow me, rodent. I have something to ask of you." The three entered the captain's quarters, where Brunhilde let go of the leash and pushed Kaio onto the floor. She then turned to her cabinet to her left as the felina said, "Stay down, dog." Though she did not look back, she knew Thomas went to try and either untie or break away the restraints on his true captain. After a moment, the woman said, "Don't bother. There's only one way to take off that rope around his arms, which will allow him to break away his shackles and remove his muzzle." She came back with the bureaucracy suit that was washed for the Rodenia boy and placed it on her desk, then moved to sit on the furniture next to the clothing. She looked at Kaio as she continued her smile, and said, "And he's the only one who can remove it all. No one else can reach the one string that holds the rope together." Thomas looked at Kaio, who only turned his head away from the boy saddened, while the child said, "Captain, come on, get rid of this stuff. You don't need to bend to her will." "Oh, but he does." The boy looked up at Brunhilde as he stood, tightening his hands into fists as she continued, "You see, as long as I have control over his life, his actions, and his joy, he can stay with you and watch you become the next dual-edged demon. But if Kaio wishes to be free, then he can easily untie the knot holding his wrists by stretching his arms down and moving them under his crouched legs, pulling away the rope to have it unfold without any effort. He can then use his hands to break away the chains connected to his shackles, then simply pull away the muzzle from his head and be perfectly free to leave my presence. However, with his freedom comes a price. The Felina looked into the Rodania boy's eyes and said, if he wants to be free, he'll have to leave you behind as well to find his so-called true love. Therefore, he will be nothing more than a selfish mutt of a pirate, like all others before him. No! Thomas reached for one of his blades and aimed the tip to Brunhilde's throat. The captain was unmoved from the boy's action, while the Rodania yelled, Captain Kaio is not like you. He's not like anyone else. Quit rambling your atrocious nonsense and let him go. Brunhilde chuckled, then said, well, look at you, defending one's honor without so much as a care of your own well-being. Such passion, even for someone who treated you lower than him. Thomas began to tear, continuing to hold his weapon at the Felina as he yelled, I've had enough of you, bitch! Untie my father right now! The captain glanced down at Kaio, surprised for a second, then looked back up at the boy as he calmed his voice and continued, or so help me, I'll spill not only your blood, but everyone else's that stands as your crew, just as Kaio did when he left you for Jackie. Finally angry at the Rodania child, Brunhilde barked, you're not even closely related to him, vermin, so you best put that toy of yours away. Silence filled the room as Thomas ignored the Felina captain's words. Then Brunhilde continued, Alright then, I'll show you why Kaio would never be if it weren't for my leadership. Brunhilde moved to flip herself backwards while kicking the blade Thomas had out of his hands and into the ceiling. The Rodania jolted back as he reached for his other sword to unsheath it, the Felina reaching for her cutlass as she stood ready against the boy behind her desk. In the midst of it, Kaio moved himself like a caterpillar to get out of the fighting area. Staring down the boy for a moment after unsheathing her weapon, Brunhilde kicked her desk towards the Rodania to distract him. Thomas effortlessly sliced the furniture in half with his powerful blade in an upward cut, then ready to swing down as he noticed the Felina moving to strike him. However, the boy missed and struck his weapon deep into the floor, giving the captain the opportunity to jump on the blade to keep the boy from using it again, while she went to place the tip of her own blade at the boy's neck. As the two stared into each other's eyes, Brunhilde said, Kaio wouldn't be half as skilled as he is if it weren't for my training. Now, kneel, vermin. Thomas glanced down at where the Felina's pistol was, then looked up and smiled as he said, Too bad you forget. Brunhilde raised her right eyebrow, while the boy continued, That sword above you ain't gonna hold itself for very long. What? Brunhilde looked up at the blade stuck in the ceiling, yet that was just a distraction. Thomas batted away the blade on his neck with his left hand, while shoving the Felina away with his right. At the same time, he grasped the pistol tucked in her belt and aimed it up at the black cat. Realizing what had happened, Brunhilde looked over at the boy and barked, You little brat! You think you can best me? Thomas pulled the hammer back, then the Felina continued, You've only got one shot with that weapon, kid. And if you've seen anything with how Kaio fights, then you should know full well that thing won't be enough to take me down. Thomas smiled once more at the Felina. Then he asked, Who said I was going to waste this shot on you, wench? Brunhilde looked at the Rodania for a second, confused, then was angry once more as she jolted for the boy. She motioned to shimmy to her left, not noticing that she had raised her hilt in the very spot the pistol was aimed to. Thomas shot the sword, disarming the black cat, but also keeping her unharmed. Then the boy turned to face the woman as she stopped in her tracks. The Felina glanced at where her weapon went to fall, having hit the stained glass and bounced back near the Rodania. She then turned just as the boy threw the pistol with all his might, striking her forehead and dazing her for a while. Having created an opening for time, Thomas reached for both his swords and pulled them out from their wedged positions. He readied the one in his right hand forwards in his grip, but held the other backhanded. The child then waited for Brunhilde to stand, where he kicked her sword over to her. The black cat glanced down at her blade, then looked at Thomas as he said, "Now we'll see how you fare against me." The Felina kicked her weapon up to her right hand and readied herself against the boy, while she said, "Never seen someone wield a double-edged sword backhanded before, let alone two. No matter." Brunhilde jolted over and tried to strike the boy again, yet every time she did, Thomas only dodged her with ease. As fast as she was, possibly faster than Kaio himself, the Felina was unable to touch the Rodania with her blade. At one point, Thomas jumped to avoid the cutlass from a right-to-left swing, flipping himself over the woman and around to continue facing her. Yet even after he landed, the boy did not raise either of his blades against the woman. Brunhilde, having so much rage, swung blindly one last time to strike the boy. The black cat motioned for an outward right-hand swing, trying to aim for the boy's neck. However, Thomas swung his right-hand blade to not only stop the attack, but also shattering the simple steel-forged weapon as if glass, so there was only an inch of its metal left on the hilt. Along with that, the Rodania turned to have his left side towards the Felina as he raised his left-hand sword to press its immensely sharp blade against her neck, almost cutting her. The fight was over and there was nothing Brunhilde had left to go against the boy who defeated her so easily. The Felina kept herself from moving the slightest bit, for if she did without Thomas gently removing his blade, it would end up slicing the woman's jugular wide open. Oddly enough, just as a more insulting means to prove the black cat had lost, Kaio came over and raised his rapier to the upper back of Brunhilde's neck, having of course been rid of all that which bound him. Felina sighed as she closed her eyes for a second, then went to continue staring at the Rodania boy, as Kaio said, "Sorry, loves. This here is a mutiny. Ship's mine now." Brunhilde moaned in irritation as she lightly stomped her right foot on the floor. Then she gave a slight whine as she said, "I hate you, demon." "Doesn't everybody, loves?" Kaio then looked over at the boy and said, "Good job, my son. Now, let's get things ready for those yellow jacket bastards." Kaio removed his blade from the Felina and put it away, while picking up the suit that had fallen from the broken desk. Thomas slowly lowered his weapons, shocked to have heard what the captain had spoken. After a moment, he sheathed his blades as well as he moved to the Kanai and said, "Aye, Captain." As the Rodania placed the bureaucracy uniform on over his normal clothes, Brunhilde turned to the guys as she calmly said, "Kaio, please don't go." Thomas continued to fit himself, while Kaio looked over at the Felina with a blank stare. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "Brunhilde, you and I did have something special, but I found that Jackie was the perfect woman for me. So please, let go and find someone else." Felina glanced down, then moved closer to the two as she looked back up at Kaio and said, "Well, there is another I've been eyeing." "Who?" "I know it will be hard, but I need you to get Thomas to pull both Captain Akemir from the headquarters and Captain Gregory." Thomas finalized the suit, checking to see if anything might be out of place, then looked over at the black cat and asked, "Why those two?" "Gregory's a nice guy and seems right for the pickings, but Akemir is a dead man. I want revenge for him destroying my previous Ecuador and trying to imprison me and my crew a few months ago." Kaio smiled, then said, "Will do, loves." Kaio went over the plan on what Thomas was to do, how to present himself, what he should and shouldn't say, what he can and can't do, and where to go if things get out of hand. The Kanai also said that Kaio himself would be watching the whole time, making sure the boy was safe so the mother didn't punish him. Afterwards, he gave specific instructions on what the Rodania needed to do. Thomas was to enter the bureaucracy headquarters and find any and all things about the Lepore Empire's weaponry. Once found, he had to dispose of it without anyone knowing. He then had to get in contact with all 3 captains, Jacqueline, Gregory, and Acamir, and lure them to marked locations outside the city limits. One of these places in particular was Phantom's Edge, where Jacqueline was to meet up again with Kyle. The boy was not to engage with any activity given by the Bureau, nor bring attention to his pirate comrades. He couldn't speak unless spoken to. He couldn't overreact to anything, nor even have no reaction to things around him within the bureaucracy headquarters. Having understood all that, the Rodania boy snuck off the Ecuador and motioned for one of the bureaucracy's own ships, as to fake walking off it. Not long after that, wearing his seaman apprentice jacket, his 2 swords at his left side, and his pistol in a holster at his right, Thomas encountered a Chief Warrant Officer 3 that told him to report back to headquarters. There, walking off the carrier ship, the boy encountered another soldier. This concludes the reading of Chapter 13. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, be sure to check out my other 2 novels, Lore of the Endowment and Ryu the Demon Slayer. Link will be in the description below. Other than that, stay safe, take care. We'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 14.